Welcome to this deep dive. It's almost a given that we all have this constant narrative running in the background of our minds.
Hmm.
It's like an internal commentator always offering its 2 cents.
Always there.
And it really makes you wonder, is this inner voice just like describing what's happening, or is it actually the architect of how we see ourselves? That's the territory we're exploring today.
It's a really compelling question. Think about it like, imagine you're in a bustling marketplace.
Okay.
There's just noise, sights, smells, a total sensory overload.
Yeah, absolutely overwhelming.
Yet your attention will inevitably be drawn to something specific.
Hmm.
Maybe the bright color of some fruit or a particular tune a musician is playing.
Right. It's like that one thing just pops out. Like you see a single red balloon against a gray sky, or you smell fresh bread baking and it just cuts through everything else.
Exactly.
That's the essence, I think, of this Gestalt idea, figure and ground. What stands out is the figure, and the rest just fades back into the ground.
Precisely. And the profound insight here is that it's the same thing. It's constantly happening inside us, in our own consciousness.
How so?
Our inner dialogue is always sorting through tons of thoughts and emotions, highlighting certain ones, making them the figure, while others just, fade into the background.
So that voice in my head is constantly deciding what gets my internal spotlight. And this whole process, even if I'm not really aware it's happening, is actively, building the stories I believe about who I am.
Exactly that. Think about waking up late.
Huh.
That immediate internal commentary often kicks in, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, instantly.
Something like, "You're so disorganized, why can't you ever get it together?" It feels very much like you speaking, correct?
It really does. That voice is so familiar. It feels like, me.
But is it truly you? Like, the whole of you, speaking right then? Or is it maybe more like a script? A reaction that's been learned, triggered over and over based on past stuff, or maybe even things society expects? That voice feels personal, absolutely. But surprisingly often, the actual content is, it's borrowed.
Borrowed. Like not originally mine.
Often, yes. From parents, teachers,
Okay.
culture. And just recognizing that it might be borrowed, that gives you a bit of space, a certain power.
That really shifts things. It's almost like tuning into a radio station in your head that's just on 2004-7. Sometimes it's playing, smooth jazz, calm vibes. But then suddenly it flips to this loud, ranting talk show host just laying into you.
And the big question then is, who programmed that station? Whose voice gets the most airtime? Gestalt psychology really looks at this dynamic between our direct awareness being present right now and our habits, those automatic ways of thinking and reacting.
Okay, so when that inner critic jumps on me for oversleeping, that might just be a habit firing off.
Yeah.
Not necessarily some deep, objective truth about my character.
Very often, yes. It's habit, not insight.
Yeah.
And the opportunity there is learning to tell the difference.
How do you do that?
What if you could just create a little mental distance? Step back and just watch that inner dialogue play out. What patterns might you start to see? Maybe a constant hum of self-doubt, or this relentless push for perfection. Maybe a background fear of failing.
Yeah, I can see that. Those definitely sound familiar. It's like these loops that just keep playing.
These recurring loops, they often point towards what Gestalt calls unfinished business.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, unresolved emotional stuff
Yeah.
that hasn't been fully processed or dealt with.
Yeah.
It tends to pop back up, influencing our thoughts, our actions, kind of like a song stuck on repeat in your head.
Wow.
And spotting those patterns, that can be incredibly insightful.
So that critical inner voice, it might actually be a clue, a window into something deeper, something unresolved. Like the harsh self-talk could be linked to feeling inadequate somewhere deep down, or maybe constant worry is tied to anxiety I haven't faced.
Exactly right. The inner dialogue gives you valuable hints about your values, your fears, your conflicts. But, and this is important, we also need to see its limits. Yeah, it operates within your existing view of the world, your current understanding. It's not always giving you the objective truth.
So it's biased, in a way.
It has a strong tendency towards what we call closure. It wants things to make sense, to fit neatly into the boxes we've already created, even if that means twisting things a bit or ignoring stuff that doesn't quite fit.
Ah, okay.
That's why people can sometimes hold on to beliefs so tightly, even when there's evidence against them. Their inner dialogue is working hard to keep the existing story consistent.
Okay, so back to waking up late. That inner critic screaming irresponsible might not be factual. It could just be playing out a story I already have about my own competence or lack thereof.
Precisely. So the challenge becomes asking, is this story really true? Or is it just a very familiar, very loud thought pattern I've gotten used to?
Right.
And this is where a different kind of attention comes in. Something we could call radical presence.
Radical presence. Okay, what does that involve?
It's about watching your thoughts come and go without grabbing onto them immediately and saying, that's me, that's who I am. Think of it like watching clouds. You see the dark, stormy ones, you see the light, fluffy ones,
Yeah.
but the clouds don't define the sky, do they?
No, the sky is just the space they move through.
Exactly. They're temporary. Your thoughts could be like that too.
So instead of getting swept away by the drama of my inner voice, I can just notice it, observe it passing through.
Yes, you start to see it more like a collaborator. It offers input, sure, but it's not the dictator of reality.
That sounds freeing.
It can be. You approach it with curiosity. You start noticing, okay, when does it sound like wisdom speaking? And when is it just old conditioning? When is it clear? And when is it muddled by fear or confusion? It fundamentally changes the relationship you have with your own mind.
It's like this inner dialogue is painting on this canvas, this field of awareness you mentioned. And that field is always shifting.
Perfectly put. Think about reading a book in a quiet room. At first, the book is the figure, right? It's your focus. The quiet room is the ground.
Makes sense.
But then the inner voice pipes up. This is boring. And suddenly, the feeling of boredom becomes the figure. It takes center stage. And the words on the page, they just recede into the background.
So that inner voice is constantly directing my mental spotlight, deciding what stands out in my inner world.
Absolutely. It acts like a filter, deciding what gets amplified and what gets ignored. And because our attention is limited, this filtering has a massive impact on how we experience reality.
Wow.
If your inner dialogue is constantly hammering on self-criticism, well, that becomes your dominant reality. Even if other, maybe positive things are also happening internally or externally.
That makes a lot of sense.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Start consciously challenging that inner critic.
Yeah.
You might notice you also become less critical of other people. A change in one part of your internal system can ripple outwards. We could call that isomorphism. A change here reflects a change there.
Gestalt theory also talks about this drive towards wholeness, right? Wanting things to feel complete. But it sounds like this inner dialogue can sometimes get in the way of that, creating splits, fragmentation.
That's a central paradox, yes.
Uh-huh.
Imagine you're thinking about changing careers.
Yeah.
One part of you, one inner voice, is all about security, playing it safe. Another voice is excited about growth, new challenges. And then maybe a third voice is whispering fears about failing, about not being good enough.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
These conflicting voices create this internal division, a fragmentation, exactly. It disrupts that feeling of being whole and integrated.
So those different voices are like different parts of me, maybe incomplete parts, like unmet needs or fears I haven't really looked at.
That's a great way to put it. Unmet needs, suppressed desires, unresolved fears, past experiences, they all contribute.
So how do you get whole again? Do you just pick one voice?
Not quite. The path to resolution isn't about silencing any of them. It's about acknowledging all of them, listening to them without judgment.
Just letting them be there.
Yes. Allowing those apparently conflicting fragments to coexist, to be heard. When you do that, they can start to integrate. They move towards that sense of completion, that Gestalt principle of closure we talked about.
Okay, that connects back to the unfinished business idea. Maybe my hesitation about taking a risk in a new career isn't just about the present, but it's linked to some old experience where I was told not to rock the boat.
Precisely. And becoming aware of that link, that's often where insight happens. It's like the whole picture, the whole field of awareness suddenly reorganizes. You see a connection that was invisible before.
Like someone realizing they aren't just lazy, but actually they're feeling completely overwhelmed and maybe scared of not measuring up. That changes everything.
Exactly. The label lazy creates one way of seeing it, one gestalt. But the insight, I'm overwhelmed and scared, creates a totally different gestalt.
Right.
And that transforms the inner dialogue too. It's no longer just a harsh critic, but maybe a messenger pointing to vulnerability. And this kind of insight comes from really paying attention with curiosity.
You mentioned attention being like a sculptor earlier, shaping our inner world.
Yes.
And the inner dialogue is like the lens focusing the attention and the chisel doing the carving.
That's a good analogy. Our attention isn't just passive, it actively selects, it emphasizes.
Yeah.
And very often the inner dialogue directs that attention unconsciously, guiding it towards those familiar, habitual thought patterns.
So if I become more aware of my inner dialogue, I can actually maybe reclaim some control over where my internal focus goes.
Exactly.
I could choose to amplify different voices inside, maybe the explorer or the ally, instead of just the critic.
That's precisely where your agency lies, your power. And it leads to a pretty deep question. If this inner dialogue shapes so much, who is actually in control here? We often operate under this, let's call it an illusion of control, thinking we can just command our inner voice to behave.
But it rarely works like that, does it? That voice often seems to have a mind of its own.
It often does.
Yeah.
And maybe the first step towards a different kind of freedom is recognizing we don't have total command.
That sounds counterintuitive. Letting go of control leads to freedom.
In a way, yes. Instead of constantly trying to micromanage or suppress it, we shift to observing it with curiosity.
Yeah.
Those criticisms, those doubts, maybe they aren't enemies. Maybe they're signals.
Signals about what?
Signals pointing towards our values, our vulnerabilities, maybe even our hidden aspirations, things we care about, things we're afraid of losing.
So the inner dialogue is both creating my experience and being created by my past experiences and beliefs. It wants wholeness, but causes fragmentation. It looks for insight, but resists change. It really does sound like a reflection of consciousness itself.
It truly does. And looking at it through this Gestalt lens, understanding this complex inner conversation becomes a really powerful way to understand not just who we think we are now, but also who we could become.
Which brings me back to that question you raised that really struck me. What if this voice inside my head isn't entirely mine?
Right.
It's like looking in a mirror and suddenly your reflection starts talking back, saying things you weren't consciously thinking.
Exactly that feeling. The inner dialogue is a figure, remember, something specific that stands out. But it's not the whole picture. It's not the totality of you. A single wave isn't the whole ocean.
Okay, so if it's not the complete me, then what is it? Just an echo of conditioning, a storage place for old feelings, something else.
These are the right questions. Is it conditioning? Emotions? Does it sometimes feel almost autonomous? From a Gestalt view, we might talk about the organismic self, the whole integrated person. The inner dialogue is just one part of that larger system.
A system, maybe.
A subsystem, exactly. And like any subsystem, it can sometimes make errors or try to take over the whole operation.
So observing it, as you said, like a separate phenomenon, that gives you perspective.
Crucial perspective. You start seeing its patterns, maybe even guessing at its underlying motives or needs, and that fragmentation we talked about, feeling pulled apart. While it feels difficult, sometimes that breakdown is actually necessary before you can build something stronger, more coherent.
The friction creates energy for change.
It can be the catalyst, yes, the very thing that pushes you towards greater integration.
Like imposter syndrome. You feel like a fraud, but you also know you're capable. Those voices seem impossible to reconcile.
Right. But maybe underneath both voices is a shared, very human need. Perhaps a need for validation, for belonging.
Ah, so seeing that common ground helps.
It can lead to a more nuanced, integrated view. Not, I'm a fraud or I'm perfect, but maybe, okay, I'm neither. I'm human, I have strengths, and I have areas where I struggle.
That makes sense.
And that integration, it's not usually neat or linear, that's messy, but just being aware of the different fragments is already moving toward a more dynamic balance.
Which leads to that ultimate philosophical question, doesn't it? Who is doing the observing? Who is noticing all this inner chatter?
The classic, who watches the watcher question, yes.
Yeah.
In Gestalt terms, it brings us to the idea of the contact boundary.
Yeah.
That sometimes fuzzy line between what feels like inside me and what feels like outside me. When we observe our own inner dialogue, we're kind of being both the speaker and the listener, participant and witness.
At the same time.
Simultaneously. Which suggests maybe identity isn't this fixed, solid thing. Maybe it's more fluid, like a constellation of different selves constantly shifting and interacting. Understanding that blurry line can help you tell the difference between your real, authentic self and those ingrained patterns.
So this inner dialogue, it's not something to be solved or finished. It's more like an unfinished symphony, like you said, always evolving.
Exactly. Insight doesn't mean you suddenly have all the answers and the mystery is gone. It illuminates the mystery. Maybe makes you appreciate its depth even more.
Like that Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Precisely. The outer actions might look the same, but the inner understanding, the relationship to it all, has fundamentally shifted.
So the invitation is to just sit with it, with the not knowing.
To become comfortable in that space between knowing and not knowing. To let those unresolved tensions, those questions, spark curiosity and open up new paths for exploration.
It feels a bit like standing on the shore, looking out at this vast ocean, the inner dialogue with maybe a misty island in the distance. Those deeper truths. It feels like an invitation to set sail.
The perfect image. And the real understanding, the navigation chart, doesn't come from silencing the waves of that inner voice. It comes from learning to listen deeply.
Listening to all of it, the calm, the storms.
Listening for the wisdom in the quiet moments, the warnings in the turbulence, the possibilities whispered in between. Every word, every silence, it holds a potential clue, a hint, a promise.
So the map isn't out there somewhere. It's written in the act of paying attention to my own inner world.
Beautifully said, exactly. And as you navigate that incredible inner landscape, just remember that inner dialogue isn't just reflecting who you are right now, it's also acting like a compass, constantly pointing towards the amazing potential of who you might yet become.